The American Musical Theater, an informal workshop in a series of television biographies of people whose personal contribution to the musical theater has made it a native American art. With Alfredo Antonini and the CBS Orchestra. With guest Richard Rodgers and singers Martha Wright and John Reardon. With students from the New York City high schools. And the host for the workshop, Jim Morske.
Thank you, Maestro. Well, that song was from a landmark in the American Musical Theater. What was the show? Larry? Oklahoma. What was the name of the song? Josie?
I Can't Say No.
I Can't Say No, from 1943, Oklahoma's first presentation on Broadway. And for the first time, that show introduced the team of Rodgers and Hammerstein to Broadway. Of course, before that, each of those gentlemen had worked separately in the American Musical Theater. Richard Rodgers with Larry Hart, and he told us about that collaboration last week. Oscar Hammerstein had worked with a number of other composers, and can you name some of them for me? Elliot? Jerome Kern was one. Vic?
I believe Sigmund Romberg.
Sigmund Romberg. Rudolf Frimmel was another. Herbert Stothert was a third. But it was as a team that Rodgers and Hammerstein dominated Broadway and began a new era in the American Musical Theater. And here with us today to tell us about that new era and about his partnership with Oscar Hammerstein, back for a second visit, is the foremost composer in the American Musical Theater, Mr. Richard Rodgers. Let's greet him again. Hello, Dick. Come sit down. Well, you didn't have your fill of us last week.
No, I didn't get enough.
Oh, that went by so quickly, too. Now, we come to Oscar Hammerstein. Now, how did the two of you meet for the first time, and when did you decide to collaborate on Broadway musicals?
Well, let me answer the first part of the question first.
All right.
Oscar and I must have met physically when we were very, very small children, because my father, I told you this last week, was a doctor.
Yes.
And he was the obstetrician who delivered Oscar's first two children.
Oh, what a coincidence. Mm-hmm.
And Oscar even married a second or third cousin of mine. So I always knew Oscar. I knew him when he was a young man in college and I was a young man in high school. Mm-hmm. And my brother took me to see a varsity show at the Astor Hotel that Oscar had written. And Oscar was in it, too. And we met then. Then a few years later, I wrote a varsity show with Larry Hart. And Oscar was on the committee of three men who chose the show as the annual musical presentation.
So you had known him over the years?
Oh, yes.
And what brought about your partnership?
Well, what actually brought it about was Larry's disintegration. Larry started to fall apart at a much too early age. And I knew it was coming. And I had tremendous faith in Oscar. And I went to see Oscar and I said, this man is going to go. He isn't going to be able to work much more. What would you think about working together? And he said, I accept your proposal of marriage. And within a couple of years, we were working together. Because Larry couldn't work anymore, and Oscar and I started with Oklahoma.
Vic has a question.
In collaborating, how is Mr. Hart different than Mr. Hammerstein?
Well, you think of it, and that was it. He couldn't have been more different. Physically, he was a little bit of a fella. Oscar was a great big giant of a man. Temperamentally, Larry was not dependable at all. Oscar was completely dependable. Oscar didn't smoke. Oscar drank in very, very small quantities. Oscar's work habits were easy, dependable, and sure. Larry's were just the opposite. You never knew where you were.
And with you, Oscar Hammerstein had that same adventurous spirit, however, in blazing new trails. In Oklahoma, as an example, very few people thought it had a chance. And yet, you and Mr. Hammerstein seem to have great faith in it. Why? What made you so certain it would be a success?
We liked it. No, it was as easy as that. We did. The book was sent to us by the Theater Guild, by Teresa Helburn and Lawrence Langner. It was sent to me with the expectation that Larry would do the lyrics if we liked the idea. And Larry simply couldn't work. And I went to Oscar with the idea, and Oscar liked it. He knew about the idea, knew about the play, which is Green Grow the Lilacs by Lynn Riggs.
Lynn Riggs, yes.
And Oscar thought it was fine. We simply went to work on it. And then the only thing that remained for us to do was to get the money together to get it put on.
Mm-hmm.
And that took something like a year. And never would have been put on if it hadn't been for Teresa Helburn's courage.
Mm-hmm. Who was the greatest source of encouragement for you during those out-of-town tryouts? Did someone give you a little boost now and then?
Well, not so much out of town. Nobody could believe what was happening to us out of town except me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else had had failure, but years of failure. The Guild will tell you, if you ask them, that this is going to be their last show.
Yes.
Oscar had 11 years of failure. Mamoulian hadn't done anything in a number of years. Agnes DeMille had never done a Broadway show. And I had been successful, but I was no good because I was writing with a new lyric writer. And this couldn't work.
Guilt by association, almost.
Almost. I had worked for 24 years with Larry, and therefore, if I worked with the new fellow, it had to be bad. So they wrote me off, too. Well, the whole show was just destined to be a failure.
And they were all wrong, and it was a great success, of course. Dick, at one time, you were quoted as saying, I'm a commercial theater kid. I don't write for posterity. I can't believe that you ever said words like that.
Well, you're right. I don't know where that was quoted. I suspect that if I ever did say it, it was quoted out of context. Mm-hmm. There is no theater at all unless it's a commercial theater. In other words, you can't have an auditorium with empty seats.
Yes.
It doesn't exist. You have no theater at all. Therefore, your theater must be commercial to exist, unless it's experimental theater or college theater or high school theater, where money has nothing to do with the perpetuation of the institution itself.
Yes.
See? Therefore, it must be commercial to that extent. I don't write for posterity. If somebody wants to sing something of mine 30 years from now, nobody will be happier than my dead body.
And I'm sure they will be. As an example, there's a tune from Carousel, and as long as there is a month of June, Dick, this song from Carousel will be sung. Maestro?
June is busting out all over the meadow and the hill.
Buds are busting out of bushes, and the romping river pushes every little wheel that wheels beside a mill.
June is busting out all over. The feeling is getting so intense
That the young Virginia creepers have been hugging the bejeepers out of all the morning glories on the fence.
because it's June. June, June, just because it's June, June, June.
We liked them so much last week, we invited them back again, too. Dick, someone called your partnership with Oscar Hammerstein as the perfect collaboration. What are those qualities that are needed for a successful collaboration?
That's a long, long question.
We are patiently waiting.
No, I won't take very much time answering it. I think that a good collaboration is a collaboration where minds, emotions, and intellects meet, like a good marriage.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element that doesn't exist in a working collaboration that does exist in a marriage, but even so, you have to understand the other person's needs. You have to give way to them. It's an Alphonse and Gaston job, where it's easier to say, let's try it your way first.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't work, we'll try it my way.
Yes.
That way there are no hurt feelings. In 24 years of working with Mr. Hart, in 18 years of working with Mr. Hammerstein, I never had an argument.
It's incredible. I have arguments with myself sometimes.
It's a different thing. You can afford to lose.
Yes. That's right. In Mr. Hammerstein's lyrics, Dick, there seemed to be a direct and simple way of expressing a feeling, and he seemed to use the colloquialisms quite often, the vernacular. Take, for example, a song like, I'm in love with a wonderful guy, corny as Kansas in August. It was simple, direct, right to the point.
Well, Oscar had a feeling for land. He had a feeling for nature, for, like all of us, for people. And he found this a medium of expression, that he could say this girl was in love with this man, and she was corny about it, and she didn't care. She was just crazy about it. Mm-hmm. She was like Kansas in August. That's how corny she was. The flag on the 4th of July, you know.
Yes.
And this came very easy to Oscar. I think it might have come less easily to Larry, who was more concerned with the how, rather than what he was saying.
Well, the reason I mentioned I'm in love with a wonderful guy, of course, because Martha Wright, come and join us, Martha, played Nellie Forbush in South Pacific how many times?
Oh, in New York, I guess it was a little over 1,000.
1,000. Will you make that 1,001 and sing it for us, please?
I'm as corny as Kansas in August. I'm as normal as blueberry pie. No more a smart little girl with no heart. I have found me a wonderful guy. I am in a conventional dither with a conventional star in my eye. And you will note there's a lump in my throat when I speak of that wonderful guy. I'm as trite and as gay as a daisy in May, a cliche coming true. I'm romantic and bright as a moon-happy night, pouring light on the dew. I'm as corny as Kansas in August, high as a flag on the 4th of July. If you'll excuse an expression I use, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love with a wonderful
Now you take a song like Wonderful Guy, with lyrics by Oscar Hammerstein. You go to The King and I, and you have a song like I Have Dreamed. Again, completely different. He had this great ability to go from colloquialism and direct simplicity to a song that was well, perhaps more poetic. What was the quality in Oscar Hammerstein that enabled him to present us with this great variety of lyrics, Dick?
I think the ability to paint with words. I think that in the case of Wonderful Guy, he had to use a girl from Arkansas who was brought up on a farm, found herself in love with the great 6'2" Frenchman, and this is all muscles. In I Have Dreamed, we were dealing with the Burmese princess who was sent as a present to the King of Siam. This girl would be intelligent. She would have gone to school. She would have had some intellectual background, and I think he would have had to handle her differently. She couldn't sing about being corny as Kansas in August. She would have to sing, I dreamed that your eyes, that your arms were lovely.
Yes.
See?
Well, to show this other phase of Oscar Hammerstein's lyric writing ability, here's John Reardon to sing I Have Dreamed from The King and I.
I have dreamed that your arms are lovely. I have dreamed what a joy you'll be. I have dreamed every word you'll whisper when you're close. How you look in the glow of evening. I have dreamed and enjoyed the view. In these dreams I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like to be loved by you. I will love being loved by you.
If we may, I'd like to move from Siam to San Francisco on the Flower Drum Song, and particularly a song called I Enjoy Being a Girl. Now, how did you and Oscar Hammerstein determine where in Flower Drum Song this particular song would come?
It came early in the piece for a very good reason. We wanted to expose the girl's character. We wanted to tell what kind of girl she was, that she was free-going, freewheeling. She was an easy girl, and she loved it. Now, this is a good way to say it.
It sure is.
To say it with music, with fast music, with lively words. This is a very hip kid, this Chinese girl. She knew what the score was. And it was easier to say it with good, vital music than it was to talk about it.
We'll illustrate it right now, too. And I know Martha enjoys being a girl. Come tell us about that, Martha, right?
I'm a girl, and by me that's only great. I'm proud that my silhouette is curvy, that I walk with a sweet and girlish gait, with my hips kind of swivelly and swervy. I adore being dressed in something frilly. When my date comes to get me at my place, out I go with my Joe or John or Billy, like a filly who is ready for the race. But I have a brand new hairdo with my eyelashes all in curl. I float cute and funny, and my teeth aren't teeth but pearl. I just lap it up like honey. I enjoy being a girl. I flip when a fella sends me flowers. I drool over dresses made of lace. I talk on the telephone for hours with a pound and a half of cream upon my face. I'm strictly a female, and my future, I hope, will be in the home of a brave and free male who'll enjoy being a guy, having a girl like me. I'm strictly a female, and my future, I hope, will be in the home of a brave and free male who'll enjoy being a guy, having a girl like me.
We were talking before about those elements in many of Rodgers Hammerstein's songs that have elements of faith and courage. Who asked me that question before? Any of you? We were talking about it before, I recall. But there seem to be in many of your songs, Dick, with Oscar Hammerstein, those areas where faith and courage are expressed so beautifully. You've never been afraid to express this particular emotion. Many composers are in the theater.
I think it probably depends essentially on subject matter. I don't think that in the average Broadway musical show with 20 dancing girls, 20, you're terribly much interested in faith. I think that in Carousel you might be. I think in
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music, you might be.
Yes. I think not only might, but are, because there's a song there, too, that has hope and inspiration in it, and it's going to be done as a duet, which is rarely done. This is Climb Every Mountain, Maestro.
Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every byway, every path you know. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream.
A dream that will need all the love you can give.
Every day of your life, for as long as you live. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream.
Dick, you said that one thing you don't want to do is live on your past reputation. That must mean you have some plans for the future. Might you tell us about one or two of them?
Well, I have written for the first time words to go with 3 songs for a new version of State Fair. That goes into production in a couple of months. Then I have an agreement with Alan J. Lerner to do a show with him. We don't know what that's going to be about.
Well, you have our best wishes for a long, successful, and fruitful relationship with Mr. Lerner and in whatever other project you'll be involved in, and I'm sure you will be immersed in something from here on in.
Well, I'll be doing something. I don't know what.
Well, Richard Rodgers certainly has a place of honor in the American musical theater. He has, with his collaborators, added breadth and scope and vitality to the musical stage. His songs are loved and sung all over the world, and he, more than any other living composer, has helped to make the American musical theater a native American art. We are deeply grateful, Dick,
Thank you very
for
much.
joining us today. Thank you so much. Maestro, whistle a happy tune for us. Thank you. And John, Martha, please, again, let's thank Mr. Rodgers.
The American Musical Theater is produced by WCBS-TV in cooperation with the Board of Education of the City of New York. Today's program featured Alfredo Antonini and the CBS Orchestra, with guest Richard Rodgers, and singers Martha Wright and John Reardon. And the host for the workshop, Jim Morske. The students participating on today's program are from the high schools of the City of New York. John Reardon is currently appearing on Broadway in Do Re Mi, now playing at the St. James Theater.